For as long as LEGO stop motion has been around, there have always been quick build animations. These permeate every aspect of early LEGO marketing, the LEGO video games, all the way up to modern LEGO commercials and fan brick films. But what makes a good quick build great? And more importantly, how can you create one yourself? Those are the questions that I'm gonna be answering in today's video. Hey everybody, I'm Adam, AKA Ant Bandit. Welcome back to another video on the channel. Now, when I was researching for this video, I actually found what I think is the very first representation of a quick build animation used in LEGO marketing material in this really old commercial from the 50s. Check it out.
LEGO is here. Hey, kids, look. Build hotels, animals, people, boats, skyscrapers, and more. So kids, get your LEGO set now.
Obviously, LEGO and animation have come a long way since the 1950s. So let's take a look at some of the quick builds that I've created to give you a sense of what we'll be doing today. There are so many ways to creatively approach making this kind of a sequence, so feel free as we're walking through this process to find different things that you can do to make it work best for you. Now, we're not just gonna talk about this process. I'm gonna be demonstrating it by taking one LEGO model and animating it 3 different times, each with a different quick build style, adding complexity and different elements as we go. Huge disclaimer alert. If you're working on a budget and you wanna try this on your own, you do not need a fancy camera with all this lighting and equipment to try this out. All you need is a smartphone with a free app like Stop Motion Studio and a LEGO set. That's it. All of the animation techniques that I'm gonna be showing you today can apply to any budget or skill level that you're currently in. So definitely don't let this intimidate you. This is something that you can try today, right now. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, it's important that you realize right off the bat that certain models are going to be way more difficult to animate than others. So I would definitely recommend taking a moment to really understand the model that you've chosen and try and imagine what are some of the challenges that are going to come up when you try to animate that. Ask yourself, does it have any loose pieces or weak connections that might break apart or even just move or shift while you're animating it? Maybe it has a really unique assembly or this really strong internal structure on the inside that's holding it together. Maybe it's a vehicle that has wheels or moving play features that need to be taken into account. For example, animating LEGO Technic sets can be an absolute pain just because of how complex the internal structure can be. I recommend starting out with a small to medium-sized set that primarily uses standard brick elements. Today we're going to be animating the LEGO Mandalorian helmet. This is an awesome display piece that I think works perfectly for this video because there's nothing going on color-wise, there's no distracting play features, so you can really focus on the animation techniques that are being used. It does have some interesting connections and build techniques used on the internals that I'll definitely have to take into account while I'm animating, but I think with enough thought put into this, it can definitely turn out really cool. Now, you might be wondering why I already built this before we filmed it, and that's because every single quick build you've ever seen is actually shot backwards. We're gonna be animating this disassembling and then reversing the footage in post to make it look like it's building back up. Shooting it backwards really gives you the freedom to animate it in whatever way it looks best on camera, instead of the step-by-step way that the instructions intended. Now that we've established all of that, it's time for me to set up my animation space, move some lights around before I start shooting, so let's get started. All right, I'm back. I've got my animation space almost ready to go. We've got the window completely blacked out here, so no light spill is gonna come through that and create any flicker in my shot. I've got my own light set up here. Again, I'm not gonna go too much into lighting in this video, but I've got a big key light and a backlight here, both hitting my model on the table. This animation table is really strong and sturdy. It's really heavy. It's not gonna go anywhere if it gets bumped, which is really important. You wanna make sure you're working on a sturdy animation surface that's not gonna get shifted around at all. Same thing with my camera here. I've got it on a tripod that is weighted down by sandbags, so that way if I accidentally kick it, it's not gonna mess up my shot. It's not gonna get moved at all. Over here, we've got Dragon Frame running on my laptop. There's the shot.
Nice.
One thing you need to do before you animate is to make sure that whatever model you're using, it's completely secured to the surface you're animating on. That way, as you're pulling pieces off of it, it's not going to shift or move around like this in the shot. You need it to stay exactly in the same position. For that, I'm gonna be using Blu Tack. This is basically sticky tack, but it's the best kind. I'm gonna be putting some of it underneath the base of the helmet to make sure it stays rock solid in the exact same position. The idea for this very first quick build is to keep it incredibly simple. I'm just gonna be removing piece after piece until there is nothing left. That way it'll look like it's just appearing on the table and building up vertically straight up once the footage is reversed. I'm gonna be selective though in which pieces I'm gonna take off. I think I'm gonna start with the eyes and the front of this faceplate here. That way that section is the last section that will get built once the footage is reversed. So we'll find out together how that's gonna look, but let's go ahead and jump into it.
Go!
I've got the first quick build all wrapped up. Overall, I think it went really well. I've got the footage already loaded up here in Premiere, so let's go ahead and take a look. One thing I want to point out is the principle of ease in and ease out animation. Every action should start slowly and then speed up as time goes on and then slow down as that action ends. I started out by animating only 1 or 2 pieces coming off of the model per frame, so essentially easing into that disassembly. I started removing more and more pieces per frame, sometimes entire sections coming off of the model. Then as I got closer to the end, I slowed it down by going back to removing only 1 or 2 pieces per frame. Using this ease in, ease out method will definitely make all of your quick builds look a lot smoother. We're gonna really step things up and try and make this a lot more visually interesting. Instead of just having each piece kind of pop out of existence and disappear, I'm gonna actually animate each piece coming off and sliding down the sides and the front of the helmet, almost like it's melting or there's like a shell coming off of it. It should look really cool. So let's go ahead and jump into it. All right, I'm about halfway through this quick build process, so I wanted to pause and show you what I'm doing here. Basically, I'm taking pieces and as I go, I'm attaching them to the sides and the front of the helmet with little globs of sticky tack. One thing to keep in mind while you're animating a quick build like this is you don't need to worry about animating whatever the camera doesn't see. So right now I'm focused on the front faceplate here, the side of the helmet, but what you don't see is the other side, the back side and the far side here. And I've actually already removed the pieces from there as I've gone. Those aren't really gonna be seen at all by the camera. So you don't need to worry about animating that. You don't need to worry about making that look good. Just focus on the main focal point that your audience is going to see in the frame. Quick build number 2 is done, so let's check it out. There was definitely a lot more elements and pieces to keep track of while I was animating it, but it was worth it because it turned out way more dynamic than that first quick build. This goes to show that there are so many different ways that you can animate the pieces coming off the model that will look cool when the footage is eventually reversed. It's time for the grand finale. Now for this third quick build, I'm gonna really step it up, try to add some major elements that are gonna make this as fun and interesting as possible. Primarily, we're gonna be adding the Mandalorian minifigure. I'm gonna be animating him as if he's the one quick building up this model on the table. I'm also gonna add a few additional shots that are gonna create a small story to motivate the sequence a little bit more. The other thing that I'll be adding this time will be some camera movement using my robotic motion controlled slider. Now I already know not everyone's gonna be able to afford an expensive piece of gear like this, and that's okay. Just remember that if you can find a way to add some camera movement to your shot, it will definitely add production value and make your shots look a lot cooler. I'd recommend looking at camera sliders or even creating your own custom DIY solution. I've seen some awesome brick filmers out there create their own sliders out of Lego bricks, which I think is really cool. Just remember, you don't need expensive equipment to create awesome animations. Third quick build is done. Let's see how it turned out. This one is definitely my favorite of the bunch. Just adding those few extra shots turned it into a story, which makes it way more fun to watch. I definitely recommend finding a way to add some conflict, some story, some humor to your quick build that will really complement that animation and elevate it beyond that singular visual. We also added the Mando minifig this round, which created a few new things for me to keep track of while I was animating. At the start, I animated him turning around and running backwards towards the helmet. This is because all our footage still needs to be reversed, which means any characters in the scene also need to be animated in reverse. Now, animating characters backwards can get really tricky. So if you're adding minifigures, I'd recommend having them do really simple movements, maybe a slight turn or a look up and down. Or if they're interacting with a quick build, you can just have them move so fast that you won't need to put as much nuance into their poses. Generally, I tried to animate Mando moving in a circular pattern around the center of the frame. This makes it easier for your eye to track his movement as he races around the helmet. Now, it's not always important to animate the minifig assembling every single piece of the model. You might have noticed that I was removing parts from all sides of the helmet that weren't even close to the minifig. This really speeds up the animation, and because that minifig is moving so quickly around in the shot, that's what's gonna draw most of the viewer's attention. So removing extra parts won't break that illusion of the quick build. And that's about it for this video. Let me know down in the comments which one of these quick builds you enjoyed the most. If you learned something while watching this, if you want to try this for yourself, I would love to see your quick build animations. Feel free to share them with me over on Instagram. I would love to see what you make. Of course, if you have any additional questions or if you'd love to see more LEGO stop motion tutorial videos like this one, go ahead and leave a comment down below. And while you're down there, like this video and subscribe to my channel for more. Once again, I'm Adam. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.